The morning the blind man guided the king began beneath a sky washed in pale gold. Dawn stretched gently over the kingdom of Aranth, touching rooftops, market stalls, and the marble towers of the royal palace with quiet light. Bells chimed in the distance, calling citizens to gather for the grand procession. King Alaric, ruler of the realm for nearly 2 decades, rode at the head of his guard in polished armor that shimmered like fire. The people admired his confidence, his victories, and his commanding voice. Yet beneath the armor and applause, there was something he rarely admitted even to himself, an unspoken fear of uncertainty. He trusted plans, maps, and visible proof. What he could not see, he struggled to believe. On the edge of the city square sat a blind man named Elias. His clothes were simple but well kept, his posture upright, his expression peaceful. Though his eyes were pale and unfocused, his face carried the calm of someone who understood more than he revealed. For years he had lived among the townspeople, repairing broken tools by touch and offering thoughtful counsel to anyone who asked. Some said he possessed a rare awareness and ability to sense what others overlooked. The king, however, had never spoken to him. In truth, Alaric barely noticed him at all. The royal procession moved toward the northern bridge, an old stone structure spanning a narrow but rocky river. Trumpets echoed as horses trotted forward, but just as the king reached the center of the bridge, a deep crack split the morning air. The ground trembled violently, soldiers shouted warnings. Before anyone could react fully, a section of the bridge collapsed into the rushing water below. Stone shattered, wood splintered, and chaos erupted. The king's horse reared, nearly throwing him off. Guards pulled him back in time, but half the escort was stranded on the opposite side. Dust filled the air. Fear replaced ceremony. Engineers rushed forward, examining the fractured stone. Advisors began arguing immediately. Some suggested taking the eastern road, others insisted on the western hills. Yet recent storms had damaged many paths, and no one could guarantee safe passage through the surrounding forest. Time was slipping away. Missing the cathedral ceremony would signal weakness to rival lords watching closely for any sign of instability. In the confusion, a stable boy stepped forward hesitantly. "Your Majesty," he said with a trembling voice, "there is someone who knows the forest better than any map." The king turned sharply. "Who?" "Elias," the boy whispered, "the blind man." Several nobles scoffed. A blind guide for the king? The idea sounded foolish. But the engineers offered no immediate solution, and the forest remained the only viable route. Pride weighed heavily on Alaric's shoulders. Still, necessity pressed harder. He ordered Elias to be brought before him. Elias approached calmly, tapping his wooden staff against the cobblestones. He bowed respectfully. "I have heard the bridge has fallen," he said evenly. "It has," the king replied, studying him carefully. "They claim you know the forest paths?" "I walked them for many years before darkness took my sight," Elias answered. "When my vision faded, I learned them again through sound, scent, and memory. The forest has its own language. One only needs to listen." The king hesitated. Trusting a man without sight felt like surrendering control, yet control had just crumbled into the river. After a long pause, he nodded. "You will guide us." The procession reformed, smaller and quieter now. Elias walked at the front, his staff gently testing each step. The king rode just behind him, tension in his chest. The forest swallowed them in cool shadow. Sunlight filtered through thick branches, creating shifting patterns across the ground. Birds scattered as armored soldiers passed. Soon they reached the first fork. The left path appeared wide and smooth, inviting and clear. The right path narrowed into darker undergrowth. Several guards urged the king toward the wider trail. Elias remained still, tilting his head slightly. "The left path carries the scent of fresh earth," he said softly. Rain weakened its foundation. Beneath its smoothness is emptiness. The right path is firm. The king dismounted, pressing his hand against the left trail. It felt solid enough, but memory of the collapsing bridge lingered. After a moment's reflection, he chose the right path. Not long after, a thunderous rumble echoed behind them. The left trail gave way, collapsing into a muddy sinkhole. Soldiers stared in stunned silence. The king's heart pounded. For the first time, doubt in his own judgment began to soften. They continued deeper into the forest. At one bend, Elias suddenly raised his hand. "Stop," he whispered. Moments later, a herd of wild boars charged across the trail ahead, tearing through brush. Had they moved forward, injuries would have been certain. Murmurs of respect replaced earlier skepticism. As hours passed, the king found himself walking beside Elias rather than riding. "How do you know where we are?" he asked quietly. "I count my steps," Elias replied. "I feel the slope of the land. I sense wind against my skin and listen to how sound travels between trees. Sight is powerful, but it can make one lazy. When vision vanished, awareness awakened." The words lingered in the king's mind. He thought of the neglected bridge, of advisors dismissed too quickly, of citizens unheard. Perhaps he had seen everything except what truly mattered. By midday, the trees began to thin. Cathedral bells drifted through the air. The procession emerged safely onto the eastern road. Dust-covered yet unharmed, they reached the cathedral gates to the astonishment of waiting crowds. Before entering, King Alaric turned to Elias. In full view of nobles and citizens, he removed his crown and bowed his head. Silence fell across the square. "Today," the king declared, "I was guided by a man who cannot see, yet understands more than I do. Let this day remind us that wisdom is not measured by appearance, but by awareness." He ordered the bridge rebuilt stronger than before and invited Elias to serve as royal advisor. Elias accepted with one condition, that the king walk among his people each month without ceremony, listening more than speaking. The king agreed. From that day forward, Aranth prospered not through pride, but through humility. And the story of the blind man who guided the king became a reminder that true sight begins within. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe my channel.